Hey guys, today we're doing a stat breakdown of Pereira's light heavyweight debut versus Jan Blachowicz, including striking stats, wrestling stats, records, and at the end I'll go through my predictions for how each guy gets it done and who I think gets it done on the day. Looking at general striking stats, Pereira is far more accurate than Blachowicz, whereas both fighters have the same strike defense. Pereira is also the more active fighter on the feet, landing 1.8 more significant strikes per minute. Looking at the types of strikes these guys throw, Pereira goes to the head less than half of the time, whereas Jan throws head strikes more than 60% of the time. Pereira throws a crazy 22.9% leg strikes, which may explain his higher accuracy. However, Jan arguably checks kicks better than anyone in the UFC. Izzy complained of heavy legs after his fight versus Jan, and if you rewatch Jan's fight versus Rockhold, he checked a kick with 1 minute 45 left in round 1, which really changed the momentum of the fight. Jan's bones might be made of adamantium. I'm not sure, just a theory. Jan Blachowicz is lethal when accurate, with a 7-2 record when he strikes above 50%. He's also had one of the largest improvements in the UFC that I've seen. His opponents landed at 49% accuracy in his first 6 fights and have landed at only 39% in his next 13 fights, so Jan's general stats may be deceiving due to this improvement. Pereira is one of the most consistent strikers I've seen, striking between 57 and 62% for his whole UFC career. Blachowicz is 0-6 when his opponents strike above 50%, so this may spell trouble for Jan. Pereira's opponents have been getting more accurate as his career has progressed, although he has been fighting better opponents progressively. However, Jan is 7-2 when he strikes above 50%, so Pereira better tighten up his defense for this fight. Jan Blachowicz is known for dropping guys, landing 6 knockdowns in his past 14 fights. However, the legendary Polish power doesn't always close the show, with a 50% finish rate with a knockdown. Jan's chin and defense is exceptional, being knocked down once in 19 UFC light heavyweight fights, so maybe people need to start talking about the legendary Polish chin instead of the power. It's also notable that his one knockdown was by prime Thiago Santos before the John Jones fight. Alex Pereira always closes the show when he lands big, with a 100% knockout rate with a knockdown landed, and he also landed a standing KO versus Israel Adesanya. Pereira has only been knocked down once in his UFC career, although he did have a close call in the first Izzy fight, so he is by all means finishable. Jan Blachowicz must win the striking battle to win, and he is 0-4-1 when he loses the striking differential, and 12-2 when he wins the striking differential. Pereira, on the other hand, has never been outstruck in the UFC. Whilst he rarely puts up a large striking differential, this may be because many of his fights have been fast finishes. Onto the grappling stats, Blachowicz of course attempts far more takedowns than Pereira, although interestingly, Pereira has the higher takedown accuracy and takedown defense. This, however, is a bad stat, since he has only landed and attempted 1 takedown. However, he has defended 14 takedowns in his career, so his defense is no joke. Jan goes for some submissions, whereas Pereira has never attempted a UFC submission. Jan Blachowicz does well with a takedown, winning 6 of 8 fights when he lands a takedown. However, in fights when he attempts a takedown and doesn't land one, he is 0-3. Despite being a good offensive wrestler, he cannot afford to get taken down. He is 2-5-1 when he gets taken down, and has an exceptional 10-1 record when he doesn't get taken down. Pereira has landed 1 career takedown from 1 attempt, and is unlikely to wrestle in this fight. Whilst he has done well with his takedown defense, he has still been taken down in 3 of 5 fights, and he has defended no attempts in the fights that he wasn't taken down in. Since Jan is 6-2 with a takedown, this can be a way Blachowicz gets the victory. When Jan is in control, he is unstoppable, with a 6-0 record when landing 100 seconds or more of control time, although he has only landed 1 takedown and some control time in his past 9 fights, so he has been striking a lot recently, and I expect him to strike early against Pereira. Jan is susceptible to wrestling himself, being controlled by more than 300 seconds on 7 different occasions, and only won 1 of those fights, which was a split decision against Jacare Souza. Pereira doesn't look to control his opponents, and has never landed more than 80 seconds of control time. However, he has been controllable in the UFC, conceding 150 seconds of control time in 3 of 5 UFC fights, which was all of the fights he was taken down in. This is concerning, remembering that Jan is 6-0 with only 100 seconds of control time or more. Lastly, let's have a quick look at the records before the predictions. Blachowicz is 12-6 in the UFC, whereas Pereira is 4-1. Therefore, Pereira has double the win-loss ratio of Jan. Looking at their opponent's win-loss record to gauge their competition, Jan's opponents are 192 and 116 in the UFC, whereas Pereira's opponents are 43 and 15. So it's clear that Pereira's opponents have a much better record on average, although this is skewed since he fought Izzy twice. Looking at win methods, Jan finishes more often than not, with 5 knockouts and 2 submissions alongside 5 decisions. Pereira, on the other hand, has ran through the middleweight division, with 3 knockouts and 1 decision win. Looking at loss methods, Jan has been notoriously hard to finish, with 1 submission and 1 KO loss alongside 4 decisions, whereas Pereira has the 1 knockout loss versus Adesanya. Something I found interesting along the way is that Jan is the destroyer of middleweights. He defeated Jacare Souza, Luke Rockhold, and Israel Adesanya, all coming up from middleweight. He also defeated Jared Cannonier, who was coming down from heavyweight, although now he's an established middleweight. The only middleweight to come up and beat him was prime Thiago Santos, pre-John Jones, who handed Jan his only KO loss. Since Jan defeated 2 former middleweight champions, can he add another to the list? To summarise the key points of the fight, Blachowicz is 0-6 when his opponents strike above 50%, whereas Pereira has never struck below 57% in the UFC. However, Jan's chin has been solid, only being knocked out in 1 UFC fight, whereas Pereira has been somewhat reliant on KOs, winning 3 of 4 victories by knockout. On the ground, Jan is 6-2 with a takedown landed, whereas Pereira has been taken down in every fight where there's been an attempt. Lastly, Blachowicz is unstoppable with control time, and has a 6-0 record with 100 seconds or more of control, whereas Pereira has conceded 150 seconds of control in 3 of 5 fights. Now, for my predictions. For Jan to win, I see him striking with Pereira early and checking his leg kicks, compromising his legs. Remember, Jan is no slouch on the feet, and he's 10-1 when he isn't taken down. Similar to the Izzy fight, I see him taking Pereira down late in the fight, securing those rounds, cruising to a 29-28 decision. However, for Pereira to win, he has to land to the head early. Since despite having a good chin, Jan doesn't react well to punches. We can see some instances of this in the Teixeira fight and the Izzy fight. When Pereira sees this, he'll smell blood in the water, and I see him going for a round 2 TKO. If I was to pick a winner for this fight, I would have to go with Jan. He's already proven himself at light heavyweight and has multiple ways to win, with wrestling and striking. Although by no means am I writing off Pereira, who could easily get it done. That's the end of this video, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if I missed anything interesting in the stats. The link to the Patreon is in the description, and as always, like, comment, subscribe, do all those good things, and enjoy the fights.